Welcome to Joe's Happy Hour, a show about markets and life hosted by Joe Fahmy. This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be regarded as personalized investment advice or relied upon for any investment decisions. Joe Fahmy is an employee of Zor Capital, and he and his clients may maintain positions in the securities discussed in this podcast. All opinions expressed by Joe are solely his own and do not reflect the opinions of Zor Capital. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on this program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. Thank you and enjoy the show.
John Douglas, welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for being here.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm going to do a quick introduction. Aerosmith's drummer. You've worked behind the scenes with so many musicians and bands. And, oh, yeah, by the way, you have an insane talent. As a total aside, as a incredible artist. People can go to johndouglas.com to check out some of your work, your drawings, paintings. I can't even put into words. Artist is an understatement. So you're blessed with a lot of talents.
A couple. Yeah, thank you.
And when I asked you to do the podcast, you said, sure, but you said, it's probably going to be some dead space, this and that. And what went through my mind was the people you have worked with and the artists. I'm like, I'm getting stories out of this guy because there's no way there's going to be dead space.
But can I tell anything? Yeah, that's the real story.
So hopefully stories you feel comfortable telling and so forth. The first one that I love, when you were drum teching for Brent Fitz on the Slash tour, I remember him telling me you're in St. Petersburg, Russia, and the bass player gets a detached retina and you're going to have to cancel the concert. But you guys come to the rescue. Brent says, I'm going to play bass. And Slash looked at him. He's like, I didn't know you could play bass. And he's like, yeah. And he's like, okay, who's going to play drums? John Douglas to the rescue. So thankfully you salvaged that concert so you didn't all get murdered in Russia.
Right, yeah, I know.
Tell me a little bit about that story. I love that story if I'm telling it accurately.
Yeah, that was the very last two dates of that European run, which was the first Slash solo run. Obviously not talking about Snake Pit or anything, but the Slash solo record and the band that he put together. And we went to Europe, and those were the last two shows. We flew to, actually the first one was Moscow. And we had a nice little dinner the night before, crew and band, and because it was a small unit, which I love. It was a great vibe and a great bunch of people. And then we had a show the next day in Moscow, and it was hot. That's all I remember. It was just hot. So I'm checking out of the hotel at like noon.
Yeah. To
go do what I do, set it up for the show, and I'm in the hotel lobby, and Pooch, our front of house guy, taps me on the shoulder and hands me the phone, and which is scary, and it's Fitzy, and he goes, JD, can you play tonight? And I go, well, what's wrong with you? Because I'm talking to you clearly, And he goes, it's not me, it's Todd. He has a detached retina. He's at the airport right now. He's got to fly home. So I'm going to play bass, you're going to play drums, and we're going to do these last two shows. And I was like, okay, here we, so that's what we did. And Slash came down early, and we did a long sound check. In fact, I think we played the whole show.
During sound check,
I think we did. We played, and it was hot. It was so hot. Indoor, no air conditioning, July. You could probably Google it, and it was like astronomically hot. And so we played. We played that show. I'd never played those songs or anything with that band, and it was obviously surreal playing, those songs, Sweet Child of Mine, with the guy in the top hat. But it was all doubly surreal looking over, and there's the drummer playing bass, so it was...
You're trying to register all of this.
Yeah, it was, we had a great time. And then we took a train overnight to St. Petersburg to do another show back-to-back, and that train was hot, too. There was no air conditioning, and I don't think I ever stopped sweating from the time, sound check to... Yeah, it was, but it makes for a great story, and everybody survived. And
I love the fact that a lot of people don't understand. A lot of musicians can play different instruments, and people
I can't. Fitzy can,
but when you get that call and you have to fill in now, what goes through your mind? Because I know you're a phenomenal drummer, but you do need some prep, I would think. I mean, it's not. Well, no offense to AC/DC. I know it's a very simple. I play drums. I can play any AC/DC song just because of the simple beats. This is a little bit different.
Yes, but there are so many nuances to those simple beats in AC/DC.
And I'm not putting,
I know what you're saying.
You know what I'm trying to say. Yes.
But I had done it before with ZZ Top a couple years earlier, and so I kind of knew what I was getting into with Slash, as far as the physicality of it, because that's the first hurdle, especially being the drums. It's if you haven't played a rock show in X amount of time, it's like you're going to do a marathon today and you haven't been jogging for 10 years.
Yeah.
That's what it's like. So I knew what I was in for physically, and song-wise, it's hard to describe because I've done it quite a few times now.
Yeah.
And it's exhilarating is an understatement. It helped in that instance. It helped that Fitzy was there because I can remember him giving me cue, like for instance, we did Civil War, right? That Guns N' Roses song, and there's a lot of stops and starts and kind of breakdowns and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That for a guy that's never played it. So I can remember him just kind of giving me bodily cues to know where those points happened.
And stops
on a song like that where there was a lot of ins and outs and the arrangement. When I'd never done it before, so it's trial by fire playing these in front of people especially nowadays in the era of where everybody's filming it and it's on YouTube before you're back at the hotel that night, which is certainly what happened with Aerosmith. And so, it was, it's for me, it's more amazing that Fitzy, just jumped instruments. I was still on my primary, I'm just a drummer. That's all I got. So, Fitzy.
Just a drummer.
Yeah, that's it.
Which leads me to, I want to know about the Aerosmith story and correct me, or if obviously you know way more than I do. So Joey Kramer breaks his foot.
Well, actually, there's two. It's a two-parter because we were here in Vegas for the residency, the first leg, and I think we did 8 shows at a clip, and I got the call the night of what would be the 7th show.
Yeah.
Joey fell and hurt, jacked his neck, his shoulder, and got a bunch of stitches. So that was separate from the foot, which came a couple months later.
Oh, the foot came later. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So he fell the night before the show, and so I got the call the show morning that this happened last night. And Joey went to the hospital and got a bunch of stitches, but he was asleep now, so nobody knew how he was going to feel when he woke up. So I just assumed that they would cancel.
Yeah.
Because Aerosmith kind of has a reputation for canceling. Thank you very much. So, so I was at the venue going, with the crew. We were there doing sound check because Aerosmith doesn't usually do sound checks. So I was down there, and actually my buddy Phil X from Bon Jovi was there. He was going to jam with us at sound check, right? So we were just getting started, and all of a sudden I looked down and Max, the tour manager, had a phone, and he points at me on the drum riser and points to the phone. And again, kind of much similar to the Slash thing. I was like, uh-oh. My heart beats because I think it's like my wife or something happened at home, and, it's an emergency call. So I'm like, okay, hang on, I got to get this call. So it was Steven, and I don't even remember, truthfully, whether he asked me if I was going to play or told me I was going to play or whatever, but it was 3:00 on a show day, and I learned that I was going to play that night with Aerosmith. And so I'm like, okay. And he's telling me things, and he would stop halfway through, and he goes, we'll talk about that because he's still in the hotel, right?
Yeah.
We'll talk about that when we get there. So I'm thinking they'll come in for a sound check. Like, surely they will come in for
practice,
much like Slash did, much like ZZ Top did when I filled in there. They'll come in and kind of maybe hit some crucial moments, or if nothing else, get a sense of, can this guy even play because I haven't been there that long. I don't even know what they were thinking, truthfully. But at that point, all I could do was listen to the live recording from the last show. I couldn't even sit at the kit because people are working and there's VIP tours happening. So I couldn't even like sit at the kit and practice.
So you pop in headphones.
I just popped in headphones and I listened to the recording.
Because that was my question. Do you go to them or they came to you? So clearly they came to you when, like, you didn't say, "Hey guys, I'm here. I can fill in." You weren't even thinking that.
No. I like I said, I was under the assumption that we would cancel. If Joey couldn't play, we would cancel.
So Steven Tyler calls you and says, he tells you?
I can't remember.
It's still a blur.
Either way, I said I would. And again, I'd been in that position before with ZZ and with Slash, and but this is Aerosmith. This is in Vegas. This is 2019 again with the cameras and it just it was interesting. So all I could do, I'm listening to the show over and over again, kind of looking at the clock, thinking they should be here any minute. Surely we're going to do a sound check.
Yeah.
Before I knew it, it's
showtime.
It's dinner time, and I know we're not going to do a sound check. So, okay. So I think I was too nervous to eat. So I just keep listening over and over because I can't. Usually, if I'm cramming, I'll write songs out. I'll chart it out. That helps me learn it, and it helps me remember it. But I know I'm not going to be reading charts during an Aerosmith show, so I couldn't really even do that. I'm just listening over and over again. I'm hitting the high points, hitting the deep cuts. I'm skipping over. I skipped over Walk This Way. I skipped over Sweet Emotion. I skipped over Dream On because I figured I've heard those.
Yeah.
I played Last Child. We would do that at sound check, so I knew that one as well. So I would skip over that and listen to all these deep cuts. So that's really it. And
so the main tunes by heart, but then some of the more obscure, what if they're doing Hangman Jury or some of these songs, you needed to
Lord of the Flies.
You need to listen to those songs.
Yeah, and Kings and Queens, some of those deeper cuts that have a lot more moving parts, and I was way less familiar with them. But I will say this: there's a big difference between, like, for instance, Dream On. Who doesn't know Dream On? I mean, we could all probably sing it by heart. It's it is an anthem.
Well, I can't hit the high notes
for the ages. Yeah. Fair enough. But I could play it on my steering wheel, of my car.
Sure.
But when you're in the driver's seat and you're not playing to the record or singing to the radio, it's a different animal. It just is. And I got through that night somehow. It's a miracle. And no train wrecks or anything. I'm not saying I played it perfect. I'm just saying I got through the night. And the last two songs are Walk This Way and Dream On. So I get through Walk This Way and we're starting Dream On. And Dream On is an unusual song as well, song structure. It's not a normal, verse chorus thing. That too has a lot of build-ups and stops and build-ups and stops and distinct parts that need to be there.
Yeah.
And so I'm in the middle of that, and I just remember this awful feeling, thinking, I should have listened to this song because I can't mess up on Dream On. It's the last song. It's arguably the biggest hit. It's like, I've made it this far, and what am I going to do? Am I going to cause a train wreck on Dream On? I didn't, knock on wood, thankfully. But that feeling in the pit of my stomach where I was just kind of like, and I remember looking over at Buck, the keyboard player, kind of the same thing that I did with Fitz, kind of like as I'm building up and I'm looking over at him, and I think he could read my mind, and he just kind of did this, so I knew, okay, we're not done yet, because it's hard to explain, but anyway, I got through it, and it was exhilarating, and we walked off stage, and Joe Perry kind of gave me a big hug, and he said, "Man, I can't believe," the ball's on you that you would do that. And I said, I don't know who was crazier, me for saying yes or you for letting
asking.
me, because it could have been epic failure on many, many levels.
Speaking of Buck,
Anyway.
I remember him and Brad Whitford both telling me you killed it. They were absolutely like amazing. Which is a huge compliment. I mean, from Brad obviously being one of the original members, he was like, I wish I could put him in my back pocket. That's what he said. He loved it.
Well, he kind of did eventually, Yeah. Anyway, that's a long story, but it's a crazy fairy tale thing, So it was really pretty amazing.
Yeah, no. And then you continued on for the next leg of the residency, and more comfortable as you were playing the songs, or are there always those nerves? No matter what?
So I did. There was a day off the next day, and I remember Steven called me like the next day or something, and which means that's the second time I ever talked to him on the phone. So it's don't think we were thick as thieves and buddies before that. I don't even think they knew my name except for to yell at me. So he called me the next day and said, "So did you have fun?" He said, "Great job. I can't believe it." He was all Steven Tyler pumped up. But he goes, "Did you have fun?" And I go, "No, man. I was like in complete survival mode, and where if I wasn't trying to breathe." And grab a drink of water and maybe towel off between songs. And then I would look down at the set list and go, I don't even know how this next song starts. Just like complete blank. Do I start it? Do I click it in? Does it, Joe, who start? I don't even know. It's like there's no time. It was just anxiety on top of anxiety. And then while I'm playing, it's like I'm trying to think what's coming next. I'm looking for cues. I'm listening for cues. I'm watching. I mean, it was just as physically drained as I was that first show. My brain was completely cooked from concentration and trying to remember and not mess up. And so I had 1 or 2 days off, and then we had one more show to do. And so I went down there as a crew guy because I don't know what is Joey okay? Is he not? So I'm walking around, and it's like we do a crew sound check, and I'm like, I still don't know, So I finally went in production office. I said, anybody heard from Joey? Is he playing tonight? They go, oh, no, you're playing. I'm like, okay, was somebody going to tell me?
You didn't even know?
No. So I'm playing again, and so I think, okay, now I've played these songs once, so I think I'm a little bit more relaxed, and I'll never forget. So I'm now this second time, I'm kind of my head's up a little bit, and I'm kind of maybe enjoying it, And all I remember is we're in the middle of Love in an Elevator. And the middle of that song is kind of a landmine of things. There are distinct parts and cues that set up parts and stuff like that. So I'm thinking I know exactly where I'm at, and I'm playing. Then I realize all 4 guys are standing right in front of me, looking at me. And just like that, I'm like, clearly I'm lost. And I missed something that set them, clearly they're looking to me. Because, like I say, at that point, I'm new.
Is it the part where everything shuts down and the bass drum on Love in an Elevator?
No, that's Living on the Edge.
Oh,
there's just all these.
Oh, that's right.
There's just all these distinct parts, these movements.
You're stressing me out with the story.
Yeah, believe me.
I'm picturing myself there.
It's like I was immediately lost, and I had no idea where we were. And clearly, they were looking to me to fix it. And all I know is I'm thinking, okay, oh man, okay, here we go. And I go, okay, I know the fill that gets us out of this whole section. There's a trademark Joey Kramer fill that ends this section and sends us into the next section. So I'm thinking, okay, so I do that fill, and all of them go like this, and they turn around, and we all know where we are at.
Oh.
And, again, kind of no train wreck, although I wrecked everything before that, because I didn't know where we were. I didn't know where I was. So, that was a kind of a haunting moment. But, I can laugh about it now, and that's live rock and roll, and I live to tell about it. So I did that show, second one, and that was the end of that leg of the residency. So I finished the show, took a bow, went upstairs, changed, came back down, tore the drum kit down, and now I'm back on the crew, because I'm teching and I'm playing. So I loaded out the drums, and then we had whatever we had, a month or 6 weeks off or something, and Joey went home and healed. And I went home and I thought, well, I played 2 shows with Aerosmith and I lived to tell about it, and it was amazing, and it'll never happen again. And, I'm like, cool, I did it.
Yeah.
Right? And so we came back, and, Joey played the next 8 or 9 shows, whatever that was. And then there was like a couple of weeks off, and we went to the East Coast to do a bunch of mini residencies at these MGM properties. And it's the night before the first show there, and the band traditionally does like a 1 sound check / rehearsal before that leg. And that's when Joey's foot came up, and he was in all kind of pain and couldn't play.
So the first time you put the tripwire when he fell, how did you break his foot the second time?
That's the magic that I can't divulge.
All right.
Yeah.
We can edit that part
I'll never
out.
get hired again.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Have some moonshine, and let's move on to the next story. It's not actual moonshine, people. It is Joe's happy hour, but anyways.
Yeah.
It's
Agua.
Michael Jackson.
Oh, wow.
I know you have some stories because I know you worked with Jonathan Moffat, his legendary drummer. You were on the This Is It tour, right?
Yeah.
Working with him.
Yeah.
That's the last tour.
That was the tour that never happened, right?
Tour that never happened.
Yeah. I got a call. They were already in rehearsals. Some accountant had the genius idea that because it was all shows in London at the O2, right? He had 50 or 60 shows.
That's right.
In London, right?
But you were rehearsing in L.A.
Yeah. So originally they were going to rehearse there, apparently, in London. They were going to have an all UK crew, right? So you save on flights and per diems and hotels and,
Sure.
Well, then I think Michael said, well, now I want to rehearse here in L.A. So they started rehearsing, and they need a crew to get through rehearsals. So I think they started with one guy. It was a buddy of mine. He was just like the one uniroadie. And then they realized, okay, we need more guys because the band is big and they're demanding, and there's a lot to do to put on a Michael Jackson deal. So they start adding crew guys, and now they're in the Forum rehearsing. And I got a call. I was at home in Texas, and I got a call. I think it was a Friday night. Back when it was still a landline and it had caller ID, maybe I think, and it said, my wife answered and it said, Los Angeles Forum. Who do you know at the Forum? Like, I don't know. So I answered, it's production, and Jonathan had he was building this big drum kit, and half of it fell down during rehearsal, apparently. And they heard that I was like a good rack builder or whatever, a good drum tech, and they said, can I fly out? Like, they wanted me like the next morning. Can you come out tomorrow morning and build this rack? And that was all it was supposed to be. Just come out and build this kit, and
that's it.
Because they had a drum tech all lined up in the UK.
Okay.
Right? So so I flew out there, and sure enough, the whole kit was held together with like gaff tape and speaker
How
cable.
How big of a kit? It wasn't just a normal.
Oh no, it was
rack?
massive. It was massive and
Percussion,
custom. 3 kick drums
everything.
and like 7 rack toms. And if you know Jonathan Moffat, he had amazing drum kits, even with Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5, the Jackson's Victory Tour and stuff. He's always had amazing looking drum kits and custom racks. And so this was put together not
like at Home Depot.
He needed help, and he's busy. Jonathan's busy, playing. So, so he needed a guy to build it. So there I was, and I'd never met him before, and he's a sweetheart and an awesome player. So I think it took me a couple of days because they're rehearsing. So there's really nothing I can do while they're rehearsing, but look at the kit and figure out, okay, how can I build this? How can I help him realize his design of the rack, but make it be strong and be able to get torn down and rebuilt and a strong foundation, and do what he needed it to do, and look how he wanted it to look. So so that's what I did. I would do it around their rehearsal schedules, and that's the only pop thing I've ever done.
And is Michael Jackson there most of the time? He's there the whole time?
Yeah, usually like in the evenings he would come in, and I'm sure there were some days maybe that he wasn't, because there was dancers. I mean, it was such a huge production.
It's a big production.
It was gigantic.
Yeah.
So we were there for 3 weeks or a month, and then we moved into Staples Center for the last week of rehearsals before they tore it all down and shipped it over to the UK. At that point, Jonathan was under the assumption that I was his guy. I'm his drum tech, like for the whole tour. And I'm under the assumption that I'm just there to build this rack, and when the rack's done, I go home and they continue on. So, but that was happening. That very thing was happening with all the band guys, because backline techs, it's a personal thing, between the player and his guy, So they start to develop. Ideally, you start to develop a relationship and an amount of trust, and you learn how they want their stuff tuned or whatever. It's a relationship, and so you're forming those relationships in rehearsal.
But no one's communicating to you any of the other stuff.
No, and you want to take that rehearsal on tour, or in this case over to the UK. But you've spent a month with this guy, in this case me, and I'm learning what you like, and you're learning. And only to start over with a new guy in the UK. It was not a good idea on the get-go. But that's what was set up, and so we moved everything over into the Staples Center for the last week of rehearsal, and of course that's when the unthinkable happened. So when he died was, I mean, again, it's like, wow, I sure didn't see that coming. We rehearsed the night before. We were there probably, I think, till 11 or 12. Michael was there.
He was there too, rehearsing.
Yeah, that was
before.
The night before.
Wow, I didn't know.
And that was the first time that the song Thriller was complete, like everybody was in the zombie costumes and everything. But that was the first night of that rehearsal. So they did that a bunch, Before that, we did all the pyro tests and all that stuff, and which was funny. I'll never forget the pyro. So this is back. I can't remember if it was the Forum or Staples, but so there's a big desk like this, kind of way out in where the audience would be, and that's where Michael sits, and the show producers and all the people and the entourage and everything. And there's a guy on stage blowing off all these pyro and fireworks and stuff, and everyone he would do, Michael would clap and go, "Oh yeah, I want that times 10." Every single one was just like, "I want that."
He wasn't traumatized from the Pepsi commercial.
No, yeah, you think, yeah, but everything was just like more, and he loved everything and he wanted more, and that was a memory that stands out to me. But then fast forward to Staples and when that morning, when we were all expecting to rehearse, and then. I basically learned about it when everybody else, with the pictures of the ambulance going to
UCLA
hospital,
Medical Center,
we're
whatever
all
it was,
like watching, and it was
what was
surreal.
The tone, or what was like in the camp? Were they was it just surreal? Like people didn't want to believe it, or
everybody was watching that TV and catering, as it spread like wildfire through the camp, and then so they called us out on the floor. That every call went out of the radio. Everybody out on the show floor. So we come out there, I don't know how many, a couple hundred people maybe or something, all band, dancers, crew.
The whole production.
The whole production out on the floor. And the show, I don't know what his title was. Some higher up was standing in the middle. So he says, okay, here's what we know. Michael's being rushed to the hospital. The family's on the way. The manager dude is on the way to the hospital. We don't know anything. Right now, we're going to do what Michael would want us to do, which is to keep on working. Shows, that's what we know. We're going to everybody go back. Everybody's phone is blowing up while this is happening, as you can imagine.
Of course.
First guy that called me was Alex Van Halen. My phone is. Everybody that knew we were working on Michael Jackson, phones were blowing up, while this guy's telling us what he knows, which is limited, nothing. So he said, everybody go return your phone calls, get back to work, and we'll let you know what's happening. So I literally left that little ring and I went to the loading dock where it was kind of quiet and returned, 2 or 3 phone calls. And so I called Al back, and of course he's dead. I'm like, well, I don't know. He goes, nope, he is. I'm like, how he knew, I don't know. He's Alex Van Halen, he knows. So I'm out there, and just a few minutes later, the call goes out on the radio. Everybody back on the floor, which at that point, it's not good news doesn't happen that quickly.
Yeah.
So we're all right back out there. And there's a guy filming, by the way, in the middle of that circle, and he's filming everybody's reaction and stuff. Because all the rehearsals were filmed, and now this moment is being filmed. And so the guy tells us, there's no easy way to put it, Michael's gone. And everybody gasps, and people start crying, and it was heavy. It was, will not lie.
I couldn't even imagine.
It was a heavy moment, and somebody said, a few people said some prayers and said some nice things, and then it was like, okay, we all know what we need to do. Start tearing down, and we'll get back with the department heads with the information. So, I literally, that drum kit that I basically just finished building, I went up there and tore it all down, and it was like the quietest loadout in showbiz history I would imagine. Certainly the most quiet one I've ever been a part of. So we loaded out, put this, everything went on the truck, everything, even if it was personal, everything went on trucks and went to some secure location to be sorted out by attorneys and who knows else. Because every day truck shipments were coming in of, just everything. I don't even know how they waded through all of that stuff. Because when we loaded into Staples, I think it was 28 trucks of gear. And every day we were there, another truck would show up with more stuff and set pieces and props.
So this was like an off-the-charts production.
Ginormous.
One of the biggest you've been involved in?
Biggest I've ever been involved in, yeah.
Wow.
Arena. It wasn't even a stadium deal. That was a arena show.
That's right. It was O2 Arena.
Yeah.
Go back to was it a few weeks, the rehearsals that you were there? Or
I was about a month.
Months?
About a month.
What was it like, his presence? Did you have any interactions with him? Anything?
I didn't have any personal interactions with him, but where I was, drums are, it was an odd stage, but the drums are somewhat center stage, which is most of the time where he entered from back, which is where I was. So I would smell him before I would see him.
Really?
In a good way. He smelled, he smelled pretty, he smelled good, and he, well, truthfully, it may not even been him because he was surrounded by this entourage of wardrobe girls and makeup and.
Oh, so it could have been the perfume.
Yeah, it could have been, but you could.
But you
point
could
is,
smell
I could be facing this way and watching the drummer play, and I can smell. Okay, Michael's on stage, boom, and there he is,
Wow.
and he does his thing. But he was a complete professional, and a pro just in singing and dancing and
Still had it, voice, dancing, everything was top notch.
In spades. Yeah. Knew what he wanted, was directing the band at certain points, and, here's what I want to do. And I think sometimes he talked about, I forget what song, but talked about something. Right here, we're going to do something, and then I'm going to go home and work on it tonight and then come in the next day, and he had it. So he was definitely hands-on, a complete pro, and
wow.
That's obviously an amazing entertainer. Yeah.
It's a deep story.
Yeah. So he died, and then we all flew home the next day, and then a week later they flew us all back out to do the memorial show at the Staples Center. Flew back out. I built that kit again, and because the band, Jonathan played, and all those amazing other artists paid tribute to Michael, and that was weird too, So, wow. Yeah.
It's amazing. I probably have like 900 other questions.
Yeah, it's
but
long stories. Sorry about that.
I want to. No, those are great stories. I want to go on to Alex Van Halen. You mentioned. So, did you design the legendary kit from? And I'm sorry for my ignorance. I just heard through the grapevine. Was it on one of the videos, or the ones on tour, or both? Or I know you worked with Alex very closely.
What I consider the iconic Alex Van Halen drum kits, unfortunately had nothing to do with me. I was still a high school kid, super fanboy. When I'm talking about like the 1984 kid or the Fair Warning kid or the big, those had nothing to do with me. So when I came along and at the tail end of 97, 98, so there are times where I create or paint like all the ZZ Top kits. Frank pretty much gives me the whole thing and I come up with it and I do it and I surprise him. And there are other times where I'm just facilitating what the drummer wants. Sometimes it's a what do you call it? We work together,
collaboration.
Thank you, collaboration.
So rewind here. So you're becoming known as the man who painted rock. You're becoming known as an artist. So are they now wanting you to design kits, paint kits, guitars? Is that
that started.
Is that sort of part of the evolution of all this?
Yeah, it started quite by accident back when I was at home in Texas playing with just a local band, and I could paint, so I started painting my drums because I just wanted my stuff to look cool, right? So, and playing around town with this band called XOX in Houston, we got really popular, and the guys from ZZ Top would come see us play. This is mid-'80s.
Okay.
And they were huger than huge, and in Houston, that's their hometown. So eventually I met Frank, and, he commented on my drums, the paint job, and said, "Hey, who painted that?" I'm like, "I did." He goes, Would you want to paint drums for me?" I was kind of like, "Well, okay. Yeah, sure." So, like I say, that was mid-'80s sometime. So I've painted every drum kit since then for him. And once you paint a drum kit, then Gibbons sees it, and it's like, well, we need to come guitars and basses to match. So I started doing drums and guitars for ZZ. And then once ZZ Top goes out, then
everyone sees that.
Other bands see them. Like on that very tour was like Extreme was huge, like a couple of years later. But when they had the big More Than Words hit, they were opening for ZZ Top. Next thing I know, I get a call from Paul Geary, the drummer for Extreme, because he sees he got my number from Frank. So I started painting drums for him. And so it just, word of mouth, that's how it worked. And because I'm a drummer, I guess it's just more, because there was plenty of artists in the world, and certainly plenty of people painting guitars and stuff. Every guitar company in the 80s had an art department. All the graphics on the guitars were very popular then. But nobody was doing drums per se, So that's kind of how I got started. I started painting drums for Chili Peppers and Pantera and Lynyrd Skynyrd and Van Halen. And
how was working with Alex?
I love him.
Yeah, I know you guys are really tight.
And I love that band. And I got that call 97, end of 97. And at that point, I hadn't been teching that long at all. I think I've been teching 3 or 4 years. I was really in over my head. And he was my idol, and I was just kind of like awestruck. And so, yeah, I learned a whole lot from him, from that band, their work ethic and their just how they operate, and then just getting to sit behind him every night and watch that magic, especially between him and Ed, and yeah, it was amazing.
Weren't they both drummers originally?
I think Ed started on drums and Al, but they quickly switched. But they're both just amazing musicians. I think they both played piano, like classically trained, and so it's the talent is thick. Obviously, Wolfgang has it all.
It's hereditary. I was going to say Wolfgang. A lot of people don't know.
He plays everything.
When he records in the studio, he does the drums, he does the bass, he does the guitar, he does everything.
Everything.
The vocals, everything. And so he's recording all the tracks.
Yeah.
So the dad and the brother are the same, or they just, whatever, virtuosos, I don't know what the right word is.
That's it.
Amazing at everything.
Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
ZZ Top with Billy Gibbons, you worked. So I didn't know you also filled in for them. You mentioned that earlier. I didn't know.
Yeah, I played 3 shows with ZZ Top in Europe when Frank had emergency appendicitis.
Okay.
And here's the lesson I learned there. This is a shorter story, I think. No, it's not. It's actually good.
No,
we had a night off. We had a night off in Paris. We just got there, and there was a show the next day. We had the night off, and I had just gone to bed, and my phone rang at like 2 a.m. or something, and it was one of the guitar techs saying, "Hey, they just took Frank away in a stretcher, and you're playing the show tomorrow." And I said a few choice words, bullshit, and hung up. And because it's practical jokes and stuff are the way we operate.
That's common.
And this guy was really good at it. And he called me right back and said, "No, I'm not kidding." And I'm like, yeah, I'm tired. Leave me alone. Boom. and then the rings again, and it's Gibbons. And so Billy goes in his, he goes, "Mr. Douglas," he goes, "time to step up to the plate." And so then I go, okay, this is real. And so we're going to,
I'd still be thinking it was an impersonator at that point.
Yeah. Well, he's a practical joker too, but at that point he convinced me that it was real. And here's the thing there, where if you find out you're going to play, in this case with ZZ Top the next night, you don't go back to sleep. So I had to play those shows.
This is the first time you had to
this was the first time.
This is the first time you had to fill in.
So I did the next show. I did the next 3 shows with no sleep, which doesn't help.
No.
So because what are you going to do? You go back to sleep. So fast forward to like Slash, and even with Aerosmith, when I got the call show day, you would think, well, that's the worst. There's no time to prepare. True, but there's also no time to, I'm well rested.
Yeah.
I got sleep the night before. I didn't, it was 12 hours. I didn't think about it.
Because you mentioned the mental drain of playing.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's not just the physical 2-hour set, it's the mental concentration. So with no sleep and all that, you must have been a disaster.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not saying your performance, I'm just saying what's going through your mind.
Yeah, yeah. It's certainly not the optimum place to be, which was to have no sleep. And that one was, the physicality of not having played a show in a lot of years. And now that with ZZ Top, I had been with them for a few years. So even though I had never played most of those songs, I knew them backwards and forwards. I knew every cue because I'd been there for years. Unlike with Aerosmith or even with Slash, where I was new, But with ZZ, I'd been a crew guy for quite a few years, so I knew those arrangements. I knew all the cues. So it wasn't as a monumental task as the other 2 were, as far as knowing the material.
And I want to, of course, touch upon the artist part. Are you, at this time, I know you're drawing in like when your time off in your room, whenever you have time. I mean, that's still your love and your passion. And
one of them.
One of your many things you're
I would paint.
Talent. I mean, so I wanted to touch upon that a little bit because, again, people can go to johndouglas.com and check out the fine art tab.
Bunch of stuff.
It's mind-blowing. People are like, are these pictures? I'm like, no, they're drawings.
I started painting backstage, and then on my days off, I was doing it. I have pictures of me playing with Kick Tracy, which is a band that we put out a couple albums in the early 90s, even though we're thought of as an 80s band, where I would play the show and I was painting drums for Extreme and ZZ Top in my hotel room, on tour to meet their deadlines and stuff. So that's a bit more. Now I just paint canvas in my hotel rooms, but lugging around a whole other drum kit and everything that goes with it is a big undertaking, but that's what I did. And it just helps. First of all, it helps pass the time because, 2 hours on stage, you got 22 hours of the rest of that day and then maybe the day off or whatever. So it occupies that time. It's a creative outlet, which I need and enjoy, and I'm
sure it's relaxing.
It's relaxing, and at the end of however long it takes me to do a painting, I have something to show for my time. And so over the course of quite a few tours, I had a big inventory.
And then word gets out and now more and more people are hiring you to either paint guitars, drums, instruments, or just hiring you to do a painting.
Yeah. It's. Once once I learned how to paint on instruments like drums and guitars and the finish work, which back when I learned, there was no internet, so it was a lot of trial and error as far as the finish work, which pretty much is automotive urethane. But I had to learn how to do that and buy the equipment to do it, and so that was a process. Once I learned how to do that, then I painted everything that if paint could stick. Jet skis and cars and motorcycles and leather jackets and golf clubs and scuba tanks. I mean, whatever.
Wow.
Just, anything and everything. So at that point, I really wasn't even doing any fine art like what I do now, like on portraits on canvas. I was doing, a lot of airbrush work on three-dimensional objects and spraying like I say, jet skis. And if paint would stick, I painted it. And of course, a lot of drums and guitars, which got my foot in the Aerosmith door, by the way. We can.
Yeah, go on, please.
Oh,
please. Yeah.
Well, this is 6 degrees of separation for sure. I love to tell this story. I tell the story to my kids because you never know what life is going to bring you. So one of the very first things I ever did with ZZ Top was in 1994. They released Antenna. I'd painted a drum kit for Frank that had, we call it the girls or the supermodels. It was a white drum kit, and I painted all these portraits of supermodels all over it in black and white. And so we took that drum kit, the band played on David Letterman in January of 1994. And I went up there with him. And so who's sitting in with the world's most dangerous band? Joe Perry.
Oh, he's sitting in with
Paul
Schaefer and the
with
band?
Paul Schaefer and them.
Okay.
ZZ Top is the musical guest, but back
he
then
just happened to be sitting in.
he was. They would have like a guy. I think Joe was there all week.
Occasional
right?
guest. Yeah.
Yeah. So because that was a cool band and that was a cool show.
Yeah,
Dave Letterman
yeah.
was awesome. So Joe Perry's sitting in with the band, and so Frank's playing this kit. So this is January of 1994. Somehow, and I don't know, couldn't tell you how. 6 years later, 5-6 years later, in 1999-ish. I get a call from Joe's guitar tech. Joe wants a portrait of his wife painted on a guitar. And somehow they thought of me.
Because he saw the supermodels 6 years earlier. Wow.
Or the guitar tech did. Somebody remembered
Somebody
it.
saw the painting.
And somehow tracked me down. I don't even remember how. And his guitar tech at the time was Jim Service, and so I painted this guitar. It's called the Billy guitar. That's his wife's name, Billy. So I painted this guitar 25 years ago now. That was my foot in the Aerosmith door as an artist. So 25 years later, I'm playing with the band, and after the very first night I played, after that, Joe Perry came off. He says, I have you in my phone as John Douglas artist. And then even, now I got to put /drummer because he knew me as an artist.
Yeah.
So it's funny. Life is funny. You never know
Full circle.
What's gonna?
That's a great story.
Yeah, you never know what thing's gonna lead to something else. Could be tomorrow. Could be 25 years later. Could be whatever.
How do your kids react when you tell them that story?
They probably think Dad is full of it.
Shut up, Dad. What's for dinner?
Yeah, whatever.
That's amazing. That came full circle. Before we recorded, you're working on a Prince canvas.
Yeah.
And is that someone hired you to do that, or just wanted to draw it?
Yeah. I wanted to paint. I get commissions, and that's what I'm told to do. When I'm not doing that, I'm just painting for the outlet and for the inventory. I got to do new paintings, for gallery shows and stuff like that. So I have a running list of who I want to paint. I have already done Prince once before, but it was a depiction of him playing at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame when he got inducted. I don't know if you ever saw that, but you should Google it because it was amazing. I was there.
Oh, you were there?
Yeah.
I've seen the YouTube.
Yeah, it's incredible. And that moved me so much, his performance on My Guitar Gently Weeps. I was there with ZZ Top again.
And the other guitarists were in awe of him. On the video, they seem to be in awe of him.
Yeah,
when he
wasn't at rehearsal. It wasn't rehearsed. And so anyway, and everybody forgets what a great guitar player he was. Anyway, my first painting I did of him was of that moment. because I was there, and it was amazing. So this painting that I kind of just finished is to me kind of more the quintessential, Purple Rain, that era Prince, because he had so many different looks. He's kind of like a David Bowie, and then he's kind of a chameleon, dramatically different looks and phases of his career. So I wanted to paint that Purple Rain era look of Prince and the Revolution, that outfit and that hair and all that stuff.
I feel like every musician has a Prince story or has heard from other musicians some great Prince stories. So I got to hear some.
Well, I only have the one. I never worked for him or anything. It was just there. I was there with ZZ Top, and they did rehearsal the night before because George Harrison was getting inducted as well as Prince and ZZ, and of course George was no longer there, but his son was playing, and so it was right now it was Tom Petty singing, Jeff Lynne from ELO, Donnie Harrison on guitar, and I forget who else was in the band, but they were doing a tribute, the George Harrison song, My Guitar Gently Weeps. And that alone was amazing. So that was rehearsal, and it was amazing. And then the next night at the performance, I'm on the side of the stage watching this again, again, I'm thinking, it's amazing. And I'm standing on, I think it was stage left, and I feel this huge presence beside me. And it's a big bodyguard, Prince's bodyguard, and standing next is Prince.
Was there the smell?
Who was dramatically...
Like the smell like...
No, I don't remember the smell.
No smell.
But dramatic size difference, and Prince is holding his guitar. There's no room here. This is at the Waldorf Astoria in New York. It's small and cramped and terrible from a production standpoint. So he's there with his guitar straight up and down because there's no room to... And, he's watching, and I'm thinking, oh, cool. He's enjoying this just like I am. And he puts his hand out like this, and his guitar tech, I think, puts a pick in his hand, and he marches out on stage, and I'm like, oh, this, what? Because this is not what was rehearsed. And he goes out there and delivers that guitar solo over top of that. And then he throws the guitar up in the air and walks off. It's just, everything about it was...
No rehearsal.
I never saw, he wasn't at the rehearsal I was at.
Yeah.
So... And
he just says, guitar pick. Doesn't even say it.
Marched out. No, I don't think so. I don't know.
Puts his hand out and they put a guitar pick
put in there, and he marched. And just everybody was in awe, and it's an amazing performance. That singular performance to me is almost equivalent to like Queen's performance at Live Aid, where everybody talks about that's like the rock and roll performance of the century. Encapsulated in a 20-minute thing, and then of course then you make a whole movie about it. For me, Prince. That's one of the greatest rock and roll performances that, and I got to be there, and that's pretty amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
But you never got to interact at all? No?
Nah.
I've never met him. I've been to a million concerts. I regret it's a concert. I've never seen him live, but the only messed up story that I heard is there was a Prince impersonator here in Vegas, and this is years ago, and Prince got word of it. Did Fitz ever tell you this story?
No.
Prince got word of it, and he started showing up because because I don't know if it's the one who does it now or it was years ago, but it was a really good show, and Prince was hanging out in the back watching the show. And the messed up part is he finally approached the person who was impersonating him, and he said, "I want to watch you have sex with your girlfriend in character." And the guy, it was like the weirdest story ever.
Yeah.
And the guy's like, "This is my idol. This is who I've been like, I guess like," and he ended up doing it, and he was traumatized. Like he stopped doing the show because he was like, "This is like the weirdest request."
Yeah, that's pretty messed up.
I think it all said it later. It's the only Prince story I know, and I've never met him.
Cut.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sort of a weird story.
Never meet your idols.
Yeah, exactly. That's so true. A couple more real quick. Bon Jovi, you worked with Tico.
Tico, yeah, he's great. He's still the hardest hitting drummer I think I've ever seen.
Yeah?
Yeah, still.
You hit pretty hard. I've seen you play.
I hit hard.
I've seen the
and it's always different when
Residency.
you're, I don't know if I hit as hard as Tico. I don't watch me. You know what I mean? So all I know is like being in close proximity, he hits hard. And I don't, when I say that, I don't, yes, I mean the obvious. He hits hard, but it's also
like crisp.
He's
like
just driving the band. It's just it's because I don't think I don't purposely hit drums like go out there and say I got to hit hard. It's more like I want to drive this band. I'm feeling the energy, right? Which you can't trigger. There's not a plug-in for energy or anything. It's like it's got to, and for me, hitting hard and the resulting volume is a result of the passion and the energy. It's sometimes it's an unfortunate result if you're in a place that can't handle the volume. But so when I say he hits hard, and when somebody tells me I hit hard, I hope that it's a compliment. It's not just about being a barbarian and hitting things hard. It's more about the energy and the feeling and the
so you're the
emotion,
timekeeper, the leader, the like
passion.
Everything.
Yeah, he's driving that bus, man. Yeah. And it's in rock and roll. That's you're the engine, you're the foundation, and in my opinion, it's required. Yeah.
And John Bon Jovi, good guy to like. Did you have a lot of interactions?
Not a lot, but he always treats me with respect, and he's. I did a painting of him. He loves it.
I saw.
Yeah,
that.
he has it. And he appreciates me and what I do for the band, and when I have a show out here in Vegas, he signs some of my prints of him. He's super supportive of what I do, and the rest of the band, Phil X, and all the guys are. It's a great band, and Phil X is amazing dude, and we get together and jam Van Halen at Bon Jovi sound checks before the band gets there, and so
he does a lot of that on Instagram.
Yeah, he's great, man.
He's super talented as well.
He's a super player and a great positive energy.
Yeah,
that guy. So
no, I get that vibe too.
Yeah,
from what I've met him, great energy. Who your favorite drummers, most influential? I'm sure you get asked this a lot.
Yeah.
I'll give you three to...
I can do three, I think.
If you can do three.
It would be John Bonham, Alex Van Halen, Stuart Copeland.
Okay.
And there would be a long list of...
I'm sure there's a lot.
Close runners up. But, those... And I can't separate the drummers from the bands they're in, meaning there's a lot of super great talented drummers, but if I don't like the bands that they're in, I appreciate their talent and what goes into it, the discipline and all that goes into it. But I'm a band guy, a song guy. I like hooks and then I'll like the drummer or But typically, if I like the band, I like the drummer, because and obviously the most obvious example to me is Ringo and the Beatles, right? It's before my time, but as far as that epic, Ed Sullivan moment where so many of the people that I grew up listening to, that's what influenced them. But technically, Ringo is not, but what he did in that context with all those great songs and everything was perfect. Therefore, Ringo's a great drummer.
Yeah.
Like Larry Mullen Jr. for U2. I love U2. I think Larry Mullen's a great drummer because what he does in U2 is perfect and great and appropriate. You know what I mean?
So it's the whole
thing.
Putting the whole thing together.
Yeah. So I like Alex Van Halen as a drummer, but I love Van Halen and everything that he does in Van Halen. I love Stuart Copeland and what he did but I love the Police, and obviously with Bonham and Zeppelin and on and on and on.
I love when you mentioned Van Halen. Eddie Van Halen said the greatest album ever written was Peter Gabriel's So album. I heard him say that in an interview. It's a great album. That's a pretty powerful. Even Maroon 5. Why can't escaping my name from the Voice?
Adam Levine.
Thank you. He even said "In Your Eyes" is one of the best songs.
It's great.
That one and "God Only Knows" by the Beach Boys. Those are his two favorite songs.
And the production of those
independently,
records,
they both refer to Peter Gabriel songs.
I love Peter Gabriel too.
Yeah.
Now he uses a lot of different drummers, but Manu Katché, who played on So, of course, Stuart Copeland did a couple of tracks on that album as well.
He did. I didn't know.
Yeah,
that. I didn't know that.
It's his hi-hat work on Red Rain. Stuart Copeland, and Stuart Copeland has a black belt in hi-hat manipulation. He's a great. It's a very expressive instrument, just those two cymbals in your foot, and he plays the hi-hats on Red Rain. Anyway, yeah, that is a great album. I love Peter Gabriel too, but I really like. I think I like Security a bit more. I think it was before he got really into Sledgehammer. So it was a big hit, but I like Security too, that record.
Okay.
And the one I liked, the Face Melting, which is all Phil Collins.
Yeah.
Phil Collins is a great drummer. He doesn't get near the respect because he got so big as a pop artist.
I tell people that all the time.
But
a lot of
Phil,
people don't even know he played drums. Like your average fan.
Yeah.
I'm like, he's one of the best drummers, and they don't even know.
Yeah. And he puts it best. It was like, he's not a singer that also plays drums. He's a drummer that also sings.
Yeah.
And, all this stuff with Genesis is like proof of that. I mean, and he's played with everybody, and then he started producing everybody, and then, what a talent, man.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, no, it's having been around the world, I'm going to ask you top 3 cities that you like. I know you've been everywhere.
On the planet, I like
anywhere.
Tokyo.
Okay.
Although I can't stand the food. I go to McDonald's at Tokyo or Outback Steakhouse. I'm a spoiled American.
Like if you either had to go visit or live or anything.
Copenhagen.
Like okay.
And
third one?
Third one.
Anywhere in South America?
I like Toronto.
Toronto.
I do.
It's a great city.
And they have some great food trucks. I've got some good food on a food truck.
You're basing this all on food.
Pretty much.
Fitz said Lebanon was his favorite for food.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd probably go to McDonald's in Lebanon too.
Food truck or Lebanon or McDonald's. Any other stories? I know you got these have been amazing, and I know you probably have 10 hours worth of stories. Anything that you mentioned the one you tell your kids. Any sort of I don't know, artists that maybe you worked with, and I know you've worked with so many amazing beyond A-list artists. Just any sort of interesting.
I mean, I don't. The Aerosmith thing was. I don't know where we're at now, but that was pretty epic. What I got to do. Even though I wanted to do more of it, I was bummed when we canceled this farewell tour.
I forgot to ask. I'm sure everyone's going to want to know the latest.
I mean, it was. I don't know what the latest is. All I know is I was not supposed to be here today. I was supposed to be somewhere. Playing, and so getting to do that. You mentioned Full Circle, which is, by the way, an Aerosmith song title, but because that's where I started. I mean, I was a drummer first. Everybody asks kind of what came first, and while I don't honestly remember, I know that my parents told me that I was banging on pots and pans, like while I was in diapers and stuff. So I know I wanted to be a drummer before I probably could even hold a crayon, So drums to me are more. It's more ingrained. It's more primitive. It's more immediate, So I think I probably will always. I would put down a paintbrush to pick up a drumstick and play. Can't promise you that it would be the other way around, that if I was playing, especially on a gig like Aerosmith, I'm not sure that I would put down the sticks. Like, okay, I don't want to play drums right now. I'm going to go pick up a paintbrush. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but so now I just thought of this. A total stranger comes up to you, doesn't know anything about you. What do you do for a living?
I know. It depends on the day.
What do you respond? Depends on the day. How do you respond?
I usually have that. I usually say, well,
musician,
one day today, I'm an artist.
Are you an artist today?
But I think I try to lump both in because that is what all I've ever done.
You're blessed with 2 gifts. It's amazing.
I never have stopped doing one or the other. I've pursued one over the other, because necessity or life, but I honestly hope I never have to choose one or the other. I can't do them both at the same time, but they both fulfill, like I say, drums is much more physical and it's more immediate and the energy exchange, and I love it, and I love to play music, and to end up playing with a band like Aerosmith at that level and get to do that at my age and my point of life. Well, I mean, what a crazy, cool thing and an opportunity and gift, and so I am choosing to be grateful for that, even though I wanted more.
Yeah,
and I still do.
It still could come.
I still want to play.
It still could happen.
So yeah, I never say never. That's one thing I've learned for sure. Yeah. It's never done.
It's I'm sure it was a very continues. I mean, it's just a surreal, experience from having played, and then like you said, even with Alex Van Halen, and then with now Aerosmith, all these people you grow up not necessarily idolizing, but listening to their music, playing to their music, and then now you're working with them in one of them. It's amazing.
Yeah. And to be and to try to fill the big shoes of Joey Kramer, who is a rock drumming legend too, and just because he's not, I didn't name him in my top 3 doesn't mean that he's not right there at, what I mean? It's like to be able to, or to try to play his parts, and I play it like me. I can't help that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I do try to play those songs with respectfully, of what he created and what they created, because I do look at the drum parts just as integral as the lead or the vocal, and the what I mean. It's like there are signature drum parts and drum fills and stuff that I expect to hear, and therefore I attempt to pull it off, because I think that's what the band and those songs deserve, and that's what I think hopefully the fans appreciate. But I had a great time doing it, and I hope I get to do it again.
I hope it continues.
Somewhere.
My goal is that they tour in Tokyo, and I get to come out and we can go to a McDonald's to celebrate.
Quarter pounder with cheese.
That would be an ideal scenario. Anyway, I mean this sincerely. I appreciate your humility. The favorite people I've met in my life are people who are amazing at what they do and humble. Because arrogance is bullshit, and I can't stand arrogance. And you're incredibly humble because you're, as I said in the beginning, not only an amazing drummer, but I've been to your art galleries, and every time I go with friends, they're all looking. It's amazing. And what I love is people who are humble. I mean, who are amazing but humble about it, and because that's probably the biggest gift of it all.
Well,
it's
thank you.
It's and I mean that sincerely. So
I'm the best, most humble guy you've ever.
And thanks for doing this. Thanks for all the
Thanks
awesome
for having me,
stories.
Joe. Appreciate it, man.
Appreciate it. And
I like your place.
This is a cool. Thanks for making the hour happy.
Thank
Love
you.
the stories.
Appreciate it, man.
Thank you.